Welcome to Bedtime Stories. Storm clouds were building. Vivian Samuels London sat in her Mercedes in front of the big fancy house in Montclair that she and her husband Christopher had been so proud to own. She was loath to go in. Her life was falling apart like a house of cards left outside on a windy day, and she didn't know what to do about it. Some days just aren't worth getting out of the bed. This was one of them. She wiped the tears that try as she might, she couldn't stop from falling. My mother is dying. There, I said it. I've put the dreaded words out in the universe. There's no snatching them back now. My mother is dying, and I feel like someone is carving a piece of my heart out with a dull-edged knife. And my marriage is just as dead as my mother will be. Vivian cut her St. Louis trip short to investigate her on-site pharmacist's report of missing drugs and money at a Rite Aid store in Newark. While they were cross-checking receipts, she received a call from a woman in Maryland claiming to be the mother of her husband's child, a daughter he apparently sired after he married Vivian. The woman also claimed he'd infected her with a venereal disease. Vivian had just returned from her doctor's office. The doctor's words were still resounding in her head. "Mrs. London, I have your test results. You have gonorrhea." All Vivian heard was that she had the green and yellow pus strip disease, the nasty racehorse disease. The goddamn clap. The white-haired doctor droned on about contacting her partners and some other such dribble, which Vivian immediately blocked out because his initial words kept playing in her mind over and over again like a scratch record no one had the good sense to turn off. My partners? The only partner I have is my husband. The same husband who was not only cheating on me, but who fathered a child with another woman and has given both of us a nasty disease. The pain was so fierce, so cruel, Vivian had to bite her bottom lip not to succumb to it. That was all she could do to keep from spiraling completely out of control, to keep from screaming like a wounded she-wolf right in front of the house they'd been so determined to get, in spite of opposition from their white neighbors. She rested her forehead on the steering wheel, breathing deeply, her hands holding onto the wheel tight enough to cut off her circulation. She had to get a grip. She'd always gone to her mother or her sisters with matters of the heart. She tried to get in touch with her sister Joy without success, and her sister Bee was out of the country in some kind of convention. Oh, and did she mention that her mother was dying? She dragged herself out of the car to go inside. She was on her own for this one. "How could you do this to me, Christopher?" Vivian whispered as soon as her husband entered the house. She had been sitting in the living room waiting for him to come home. And she hadn't been idle while she waited. She'd gone through Christopher's pockets and his dresser bureau and found a Father's Day card from his illegitimate daughter and one from the girl's mother. The card contained a picture of a woman who was naked from the waist down. She was sitting on a cheap leather couch with her legs splayed wide open and the pink insides of her hairy yoni exposed, presumably for Vivian's husband's pleasure. Vivian thought she was going to be sick. She'd also found 2 empty Rite Aid prescription bottles for Dilaudid and Zydone and 1 half-empty bottle of OxyContin. Each bottle had been intended for one of her customers. The man she had entrusted her heart to was not only a liar and a cheat, but apparently he was also a drug addict and a thief. If he stole the drugs, Vivian had no doubt he was responsible for the missing money as well. The cards, photo, and prescriptions were an irrefutable indictment against Christopher. She placed each item on the coffee table in front of her, waiting for him to come home. At first, Christopher froze. And then the light went out of his eyes, and it seemed like he'd shrunk right in front of her. He moved to sit in the love seat across from her like his feet could no longer bear the weight of his guilt. He looked so sad, but not nearly as sad as Vivian felt. I feel like such a fool. All those extended periods of time when he'd supposedly been away doing stakeouts or undercover assignments had obviously been a lie. He was doing undercover work, all right, with his other family in Maryland and God knows who else, because he apparently didn't get the clap from his daughter's mama. Her face burned with embarrassment and humiliation. You see, the black detectives on the Newark police force were as thick as thieves. She couldn't help but wonder how many of them knew about Christopher's infidelity and if they were laughing at her behind her back for being so damn stupid. To make matters worse, Christopher worked directly under her father. Oh, God, please don't let Daddy find out. She placed her hand over her mouth to muffle a cry of agonizing outrage when Christopher said, "I'm so sorry, baby. I swear I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you so much." That did it. Those words opened the floodgate of emotion Vivian thought she would be able to hold back at least until she could crawl away like an animal to some place where she could be alone in her misery and lick her wounds. She hissed, "Don't you touch me," when Christopher moved to take her in his arms to console her. She knew if she allowed him to touch her, she would fall apart. Maybe even make a fool of herself and let him make love to her one more time. Lie to her one more time. Tell her some implausible, ridiculous story so that they could go back to a time and place where she didn't know what she now knows. "It's over, Christopher," Vivian said with a resolve she really didn't feel. "I want you to leave now." When he didn't leave, she said it again, hoping that she could somehow convince herself that she meant it. "Don't make this any harder than it already is, Christopher. Just leave, please." Vivian didn't have to beg. She was a powerful witch. She could make a husband leave, and he knew if she was forced to resort to those measures, it would not be pleasant for either of them. With head hung low and an air of dejection surrounding him like the clouds that were rapidly building outside their window, Christopher stood to make his way to the bedroom. A half hour later, he was standing before Vivian with an overnight bag in his hand. "Can I call you later?" he asked. Vivian couldn't answer, nor could she hold back the tears when her big, handsome husband paused in front of the open doorway, his eyes pleading with her to stop him. A loud clap of thunder pierced the silence seconds before the sky opened up and a pounding sheet of rain began to fall. Christopher's eyes were bright with tears when he closed the door behind him and walked out of her life. Vivian sat on that couch in the dark for more than 2 hours, too numb to move, while the storm raged outside. The shrill sound of the ringing phone shattered her lethargy. She walked toward the phone like a zombie, determined to hang up if she heard Christopher's voice on the other end. "Hello," she said in a voice little more than a whisper. It was her father, calling from the hospital to let her know that her mother had just died. Some days it doesn't pay to get out of the bed, and this was one of them. My name is Carolyn Evelyn-Holland. This reading was from my second novel entitled The Realm of Awe. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.